All right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today and sticking with us. I know we had to reschedule. Thank you for your patience with that, and thank you for being here. Today, uh, Tom and we've got you all know Teri Robinson. We've got Tom and Terry here, and myself to talk about a very important growth strategy for smaller credit unions. All credit unions are looking at field of membership um, expansions to grow, but our focus is smaller credit unions, as it is has always been with your credit union partner. That's who we work with. That's who we are. It's our brand. And so today we're really going to be talking about field of membership as a growth strategy from the perspective of smaller credit unions and why it's important. Our hope today is one, you're going to definitely hear a best practice and what remarkable success looks like. Two, um, you'll learn a little bit more about FILDA membership expansion, particularly with rural communities and underserved communities, which also is another area that's really near and dear to the YCUP heart. And then learn about the process, what the process looks like. I'll be sharing a few red flags and things for the NCUA's perspective. And then, where do we go from here? So thank you for joining us today. Hope it's a worthwhile event for each one of you, something you can take back to your credit union and consider as a growth strategy. With that, Mr. Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Scott. And hey, everybody, and Happy New Year. Going to start off with a overview of the agenda for our webinar this morning. And I think it's not morning for everyone. If we have East Coasters, we've got noon time here. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback before we get into it off of what Scott said, when I think of our mission here at YCUP and what we set out to do every day with our credit union clients, it's really to help them grow and to discover pathways to growth and also to make an impact. And those things are very intertwined. Certainly, the credit unions that we work with that make an impact on the credit unions that are on the members that they serve are the ones that are growing. And so as we thought about, this strategy as it relates to growth of field of membership expansion, we felt like we wanted to share an example of a credit union that has used field of membership expansion as a growth strategy, but also that leverages this sort of philosophy of making an impact to grow. And the best example that we can always think of as far as a credit union that does those things is Teri Robinson and Iron Workers USA. And so we're going to talk to her about her story and the impact that she makes on her members and the ability that she has to serve more members because of the process that her credit union went through to expand their field of membership to iron workers nationwide. And then we'll kind of ask her some of the things that she did to sort of leverage that opportunity. So once she had the expanded field of membership, how did she make the most of that opportunity? How did she gain the visibility of the people that then had the ability to join the credit union? And how did she use that expansion as sort of this growth springboard? Then Scott's going to talk a little bit about the opportunities that credit unions have to expand their field of membership. So the different types of expansions that credit unions consider, and some of the things that, as he mentioned, the NCUA looks for when you're expanding your field of membership and submitting that application. We'll talk a little bit about how we help credit unions with field of membership expansion, sort of our philosophy and our approach to helping credit unions think through that process and that journey. And then we're also going to open it up for Q&A and have a sort of an informal discussion around what you're thinking about as it relates to a field of membership expansion. And then we'll wrap it up. And so really looking forward to this conversation and really excited to hear from Teri, as always, about how things are going at Ironworkers. And so I'm happy to introduce Teri Robinson. She is the president and CEO of Ironworkers USA, FCU, in Portland, Oregon. With more than 35 years in the industry, Teri joined what was then known as Pacific Northwest Ironworkers in 2010 during a time of very significant financial struggle. But under her leadership, the credit union transformed into one of the fastest growing, organically growing credit unions in the country, increasing assets from 7.5 million to over 143 million in assets. And I just looked it up this morning, but because you always have to look it up. Every time I introduce Teri, it's always wrong because she's like, oh, we've grown, by 10 more million in assets. But they started with 5,500 members and now have nearly 18,000 active members, which is just amazing. The credit union expanded their field of membership in 2018, I think. Is that the right year?
Yes.
And it allowed them to serve 90,000 iron workers across the country. Teri is deeply committed to the philosophy of people helping people. She's known for her hands-on approach, putting in tons of face time with her members, providing financial education. Iron Workers Credit Union is also a CDFI credit union. And she works directly with members to help them overcome financial challenges, rebuild credit, avoid predatory lenders and those predatory providers, and create long-term stability for her members. We're honored to welcome Teri today to talk about her credit union success. Thank you, Teri, so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that long introduction.
Most
people probably already know me.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It was actually longer and I shortened it. But so let's start with first is how things are going at the credit union. So, it's the beginning of the year. You always have something cooking. And so what's going on at Iron Workers USA? What's on the schedule for 2026?
Yeah, I think just continued growth for the credit union. I continue to see more reasons for us to be here as a credit union, especially with the economies that's going on. We do have a lot of members out of work right now in some of the, Northwest here and then on the East Coast. So we're kind of hunkered down a little bit, but we continue to outreach to new members. I think Friday to Monday, we had 25 new members come in online. So I think, as a credit union, we look at it as huge opportunities out there. So I'm excited to help others see that we're needed now more than ever as credit unions.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, things are going well and seemingly have been going well, for a number of years now. Of course, we know the success story, but I want to start up, kind of in the beginning. What point did you start thinking about expanding the field of membership for the credit union? Did you have dreams or aspirations from the get-go, back in 2010 to go nationwide? What was the thought process there?
Yeah, we had gone from the Portland area credit union, Local 29 credit union, and then we expanded into Seattle and Spokane throughout our years, the 50 years prior to me coming here. And then we had 5 states, the Northwest. And what would happen as a credit union, we had members that would come in and work in this jurisdiction, this area from Tennessee, Texas, Utah, all over the United States, and they would become a member. And then they would go home and they would tell iron workers about us. And they would try and call in their, people that they'd referred would try and call the credit union. And I would have to Google and find another credit union that they could join in their area. And I would always keep telling them, don't worry, someday we'll be available for you too. There's no other ironworker credit union in the country other than there's one in Pennsylvania that just helps, one particular local. So I knew that there was a huge opportunity kind of in the back of my mind. I thought one day maybe, but I had a lot of other fires that I had to put out before I could even think realistically that we could do a nationwide charter. So I kind of was at the mindset of I'll just help other credit unions get members. I would try and Google them and find somebody local that my iron worker could get into. But one of the things we found is a lot of times our members wouldn't be eligible. Maybe they had some credit issues, credit challenges. People didn't understand the work history of an iron worker and the ups and downs. And so that was hard to watch members get denied trying to go to other credit unions. So I just knew that we had to kind of pivot at some point and put it out there on my actually wrote it down, and it was in my office, Iron Workers USA, for a long time for me to visualize that that was what we were going to do, manifest it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about the sort of the process and kind of what the NCOA looks for later during the webinar, but I think you did touch on something that I think is important is that when you're doing an application, the NCOA really wants to understand that there is a need. And so, you served as the Teri Robinson credit union locator for a while, and that was great. And you did what you could to get these folks access to a credit union, but still they couldn't join because maybe the credit union wasn't willing to serve them because of their credit history or what have you. And so you could paint this picture during the application that these folks are still unable to access traditional financial services, and that just strengthens your case when you're talking to the NCUA about an expansion. And so of course, a testament to the lengths that you go to serve your members and make sure that they have access. And ultimately, the best way for you to do that was to expand your field of membership so that you could be the one that serves them. So that's really amazing. So when did you make that decision to finally expand the membership, and kind of what did that process look like at the start?
Yeah, if I can, my board, we'd started with the board, having a conversation with them, getting their buy-in, as everyone knows, the economy, the what if we get in these areas and we don't know these people and they're not loyal to us like our members are now. So there was a lot of discussion around that. It's scary. What if we do take losses? So just kind of navigating my board through that. I know I'd worked with Scott at the time, and we'd put it in our planning session, and we'd had long discussion, and then it was in our business plan. And I'll tell you, it was kind of like a 5-year goal. It was just in the plan. And one year the examiner came in, and I want to say it was probably like 2015. And the examiner read our business plan and saw that we had that in there. And he was very apprehensive and said, "Why would you have this in here? I'm going to make this a finding." And I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. You can make it, you can make a note in your concerns for your record, but we're not moving forward with that. That's just our kind of, we're throwing everything at the wall. Let's capture it and let's see if it manifests into anything." Fast forward 2 years later, he's in and sees our numbers and sees where we've gone as a credit union. And he rereads that same business plan, and that documentation is in there. And he says, "Why haven't you done this yet?" And I was mortified. I was like, "You're the same examiner that told me what you were going to write me up as a finding because I had this in my business plan." So I was quite, perplexed by that. But I thought, okay, well, maybe now is the time to kind of just dip my toe in there and see what the NCUA says. So I reached out to Scott and Allison and said, "Hey, you guys, let's try and move forward with what at the time I thought was going to be a tip charter change, and which is the trade industry profession, and just trying to go after, you know, iron workers or union iron workers in the trade." And then it kind of mushroomed after our conversation with the NCUA. But that's really how that story started, where the NCUA first said, no. And then, when I took it up the chain, it changed. So
Were there any operational things, or any investments in staffing or technology that you made before you started the application process so that, you were sort of visualizing that, okay, in X number of years, we're going to be able to serve potentially folks across the country. What do we need to look like as a financial institution? And, once we get to that point so that we can actually serve those folks, did you make any of those investments before starting the application process?
we'd actually, in 2015, we had done already the remote deposit capture, and implemented that. So we kind of had a pretty good handle on the access with members, through ATM network or through the remote deposit capture. We had done DocuSign think that was in 2016. That was before the pandemic. We knew we had to be accessible to the membership. And then trying to think of what else we did, like financially. I don't know that there was a whole lot more that we had to put into it to get us ready to gear up, other than staffing, making sure we'd be prepared with staff to help answer members, on the East Coast time versus West Coast time.
Mhm. And Scott obviously was a big part of this project and helped you through it. So Scott, feel free to jump in based on what you recall during the process. Anything
Okay.
that comes to mind for you?
Yeah. One, well, several things. When it needs to be part of Teri's memoir when she decides to, move full time to Arizona. But her persistence, and before 2015, when Teri was working through I don't know, 2 or 3 years of really hard work, of one uh, as she mentioned at the very beginning, when she got there, there were some challenges, the financial challenges to work through. Then the persistence of, okay, great, we've cut expenses as much as we can, but unless we can start growing loans, and Teri, like she does everything else, she bit into it, didn't let go. And through that whole time, NCUA's throwing stones at her and and we have this conversation, you'd think it would be, woe is me, these dirty, rotten, examiners and blah, blah, blah. It was never that way with Teri. She had those challenges with examiners and with some board members, but it was always, we're going to get there. And I remember her early on talking about Ironworkers USA. And so I think sometimes you get credit like Terry's and others that are here. I see Linda on the call. You see leaders like that people think, oh, well, that's easy for them. No, it isn't easy for them. It's freaking hard. And throughout all of it, Terry's not a victim. If you know Terry, and it was always about, okay, what do I need to do next? What do we need to do next? What can we? So the thing that stands out to me, perseverance through all of it. It's a big sell to go to the NCUA and say, give us the US. It's a really big sell. And you have to be able to demonstrate you can, the technology. Terry was invested in technology early. It's the ability to get people that you can lend to people. Ironworkers is, if any of you saw her Wagner Award video, some of her members she helps are, I mean, they're struggle. They're not the easiest case. So just perseverance and then figuring out how do we do it. And that's that's where we're here today. I mean, really, is for you guys to see, what that looks like.
And I think too, Scott, the biggest challenge was I was 26 million at that time. And I don't, when I, in 2018, when I finally pushed for the charter change, and there was a lot of question from the NCUA, like, how are you going to be able to, you're not in cuddle, you're not on shared branching. And I know Tom was going to touch on some of the things that they pushed back on me with, but, we were still able to, I do the yeah, but I can do this. If I can't do that, I'm going to do this. I try and combat there instead of, the no, I can't. So I know that there was a lot of concern, how are you going to be able to get cash to a member that's in Boston? Okay, well, I up their ATM limit. Like, I'm constantly able to say, I can do this if I'm pushed with a question. And that's what we had to do, is think of the what if scenarios.
Yeah, but response sounds like your Minnesota roots coming out, Teri.
For sure.
So anything else that you can remember about the application process, for you or Scott? It is a lengthy process and it's often some back and forth with the NCUA, with the examiners that you work with. they're doing their job, certainly. But anything else that you would want to sort of share with folks who are thinking about this process about what made it effective or what made it successful ultimately, or anything else that folks should watch out for, strictly speaking about the application itself.
Sure. I think just making sure that you are prepared with the what if scenarios, like the cuddle. We're not in indirect lending. How are you going to handle that? And the shared branching. And what I said in my exam and my application was, we'll evaluate it, and in 6 months, if after being under this, granted this approval, we'll reevaluate it, and we'll continue to put the litmus test to it to see if we need to invest in those technologies or those resources for our members. We're not opposed to that. We just we don't think that that's necessary. We feel like members or consumers have a lot of opportunities to get cash or deposit with us or sign a document. And we all know, fast forward to 2020 and beyond, we're way beyond that now, with the digital piece. But back then it was kind of hard for them to comprehend that we would be able to validate members, and and that is a concern, when you're opening up your membership to other people. How are you going to make sure they're not fraudsters or people that are trying to, take advantage of your opportunity of kindness as credit unions? So
Yeah, and a lot of this is laid out in the business plan, as part of the application. That's one of the biggest pieces of the application is the business plan. And, I asked you, earlier if there were things that you did on the front end to get ready for the expansion. And that isn't necessarily the expectation from the NCUA. They don't necessarily need you to have, all the bells and whistles from a technology standpoint. You don't have to have branches in all of the locations where you plan to expand to right off the bat. They just want to know that you have a well thought out plan to expand services as needed, after the expansion. And so, those things don't necessarily have to be in place as long as you have a plan for putting them in place down the road. And that's a big part of what you do in the business plan that you put together.
yeah.
Any other thoughts on that, Scott? On that piece, Scott?
Yeah, again, you're making an argument, you're selling to NCUA that, we can reach these folks and we can serve them. And what's Teri mentioned at the beginning, she's got some transient members that will come here in the Pacific Northwest and work for a while, and then they move back to Georgia or Florida or some other place. And she was still able to serve those folks. So it's like, we're serving them today. I think Teri's got a heat map in a minute, and you'll see how that it's one of my favorite heat maps on the planet. And if that's normal to have a favorite heat map, but I do. Anyway, but you have to make the argument, and you think, well, small credit unions can't make the argument. Well, you can. I mean, Teri was 10 million in assets when she got remote deposit capture. How do you do that? Well, it's prioritizing. It's prioritizing the right things. But I don't remember much pushback from the NCUA on that piece of it, because she's been doing it and she had demonstrated we've made investments there. We can do it. So, and there was, of course, it was pretty easy to demonstrate the common bond.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's turn to, making the most of this opportunity once you've got the approval. So the approval goes through, you're celebrating in Portland, and everything is really exciting. So what comes next? In the following months and years, what were some of the action items that you started on to kind of take advantage of this new opportunity that you had?
It was developing, I think, our online portal, the online application for the members, making sure that we were able to validate who they were, coming in through those channels. I didn't spend a lot of money, marketing us anywhere nationally. We did have opportunities in like an Ironworker magazine and things like that. But I knew as soon as I turned a dial, something like that, it would create an influx of people. And so this has had to be strategic and slow, methodical. And so just kind of it was more of a grassroots effort to get our name out there subconsciously in things that we do, some events that we were able to get in front of some ironworkers, some conventions, things like that, that we were able to start putting our name out there. But it really came from word of mouth of our members. These members that have joined us and moved on, or members that had found us miraculously on the internet and joined us and had a great experience, and they talk, and that's what kind of mushroomed us to explode in and with no real marketing in a advertisements on a website, or banners. I'm thinking when you drive, what's that the thing?
Billboard.
Billboard, thank you. I didn't have billboards. I didn't have things like that commercials, like where am I going to find my members? Other than Facebook, I would go out and I would join all these other little groups or these other locals that had um, Facebook pages. And then I would go out and like it as the credit union, their posts. And then it would be miraculously, I'd have somebody from that area call us to join. Or if I seen an event they were doing, I would send them some stuff, flyers, things like that. Not a lot of money, but just things that, hey, they might be interested in having us be as part of their picnic or their Christmas party or something. So really low key, again, grassroots, guerrilla marketing, taking it from that perspective. One of the things I even thought, like when I went to this thing in Michigan, and I knew there was going to be like 600 iron workers there, and I thought, oh, okay, if I give all of them a luggage tag for their suitcases that they're going to take home, that they'll put those on their suitcases and fly around, and people are going to be seeing our logo and not even subconsciously knowing it. And sure enough, about 2 days later, I get a call from another CEO of a credit union in Michigan, and he said, I think I met some of your members in the airport. I saw your little luggage tag. So, you know what? I know that stuff works. Not a lot of money, but it does get our name out there and get members seeing who we are. I'm just gonna have a little side note here, but like when I've gone to GAC and I've gotten in a cab and I'll see cranes in the sky, so I'll start talking to the Lyft driver or whoever about, oh, you must have a lot of stuff going on here. Must be um, good economy because I see my members are working. Oh, your members. And then we get to talking about a credit union. And by the time I'm done, they want to join my credit union as I'm getting out of the cab. And I always, point out other local credit unions that are there in Washington, D.C. But I think we always have an opportunity to, every interaction we have, remind people that they have a credit union that they can join. Um, anyways, it's just my little thing. When we go to GAC, we better be telling all those Lyft drivers and Uber drivers, join a credit union because we're all getting in them.
That's right. That's right. I still think that there needs to be an Uber credit union or a,
I do
rideshare
too.
credit union. Yes, absolutely.
See,
Um,
there's
and
no
then
reason for credit unions to go away when we have ideas of credit unions that could pop up.
that's right. That's right. Absolutely. And that strategy of sort of creating some of these artifacts or these swag pieces that were really
Mhm.
like relevant to their ironworker profession, that strategy kind of evolved into the black box
It
and into
did.
into sort of the member thank yous that you give. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know it's sort of well documented, but for those who haven't seen it before or who haven't heard kind of why you do it and the approach to doing it, can you share a little bit about how that came to be and kind of how it looks today?
Yeah, so similar to this last weekend, a few years ago, I think it was in 2020, we had 40 members apply for membership on a weekend. I thought it was a scam. And I came back from vacation and I said to the ladies at work, we've got all this swag stuff here. And these people took their time on the weekend on a Sunday to join us. Let's do something special for them. And I always seen the Fit Fab boxes and the Chewy boxes for dogs and things, and I thought, what wouldn't our members think this is cool? And they don't know it's coming, and we send them a thank you. And we sent out 40 boxes. They were just raggedy boxes that we had around the office that I had for something else I was going to do, and they were white, and I threw a bunch of stickers on top of them, and because we do hard hat stickers and things like that. But I think I threw in a hat and a t-shirt because we had some t-shirts laying around and didn't know their sizes. But I thought, well, they may know somebody that wants it, and some pins, air fresheners, just tchotchke stuff. And it took off. It was like a hit. And I had other people calling, asking how they could get one of those boxes because our members took them to the job sites, showed others that they'd gotten this, and it mushroomed into this box. Got one of them here. I don't know if you can see it because I can't see my screen, but um, we put some brochures in there, a bandana, hat, some mints, chapstick, a t-shirt, all kinds of stuff. Um, kind of mushroomed into that, where now members call us asking where's my box, once they've joined the credit union because they've seen that through someone else. Now they do need to do something with us, get a loan, get an active checking account. So we do require, it's not just by joining the credit union, but we took that membership to a new level. And I get members that message me on Instagram or in Facebook saying, hey, I ran out of air fresheners. Can you send me some more? So I'll put a box of those, that size box, ship it out to them and say, hand it out to everybody you know. It's also mushroomed into, we do baby boxes for our members who have had little babies. When we're notified that we have a new little iron worker. And then we do a wooden box here that's more for referrals. So if I see, again, they don't know, it's not like an official referral program, but if I know that I've seen somebody's name 5 times come in as referring members, I'll slip them that and send them a thank you saying, we really appreciate you, promoting the credit union. You didn't have to do that, and we know that, and we just appreciate it and love you as our member. So just kind of spread the love.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the marketing piece is so important. And first to note that that's part of the NCOA application, right? So for a field of membership application, you need to have a very full, well thought out marketing plan. And some of the things that you can include in there are things like this. And you mentioned, Terry, not investing in billboards, but you did invest in walking billboards, right? And I think that's what's so
Yeah.
powerful about the box is that you have folks who wear this stuff and are proud to wear it, and it spurs questions on job sites. And folks learn about the credit union that way. And I think the intentionality of it, of giving out things that are actually useful to iron workers. Like my favorite is the air fresheners for trucks, right? Like, you can imagine a smelly truck after a long day of work for some of these folks, and having a nice air freshener. I mean, that's so brilliant. I just love stuff like that. One of my favorite examples that actually isn't an iron worker example, it was from Stephanie Sievers when she worked for Anika back in the day. She would give out gnomes, garden gnomes, like big, like 2 foot high garden gnomes when she would do a mortgage with a member. And she would give the garden gnome to the borrower, and then they'd put it at their house.
I
And
love that.
yeah, it would be this conversation piece where someone would be like, "Oh, where'd you get that awesome garden gnome?" "Oh, I got it from Anika Credit Union when I got my mortgage from them." Right? So stuff like that, I think, is just really brilliant, and it does make an impact. It absolutely leads to visibility and growth. Now, I think the other thing that might be sort of relevant to credit unions that are thinking not necessarily like a seg or a specific group of employees, but maybe from a community standpoint, is figuring out where to focus from like a geographic standpoint once you have the expanded field of membership. Where do I start? Where do I focus? And so you still have that element at Ironworkers because you had to pick maybe a different local or a certain area that had a higher concentration of iron workers. So how did you pick where to focus? And maybe this could lead us into the heat map of where you've had real traction with the credit union. But like, how did you pick across the country where you wanted to focus those growth and visibility efforts?
Well, a lot of it came organically, I'll be honest. I flew in on an inclusive conference in Florida a few years back, and we just stopped in a union hall there. And you can see on this map here, we had like 9 members in Florida or the area. And after going there and talking to a business manager, I think on our new map, it shows 300 and some members. It's just, taking some time to, anytime I go to a conference, I step out and make sure I run to the local, just to say, hey, we have 338 now in the Florida area.
This was the original? Is this or this what?
This is what I used when I did my proposal to the NCUA.
Okay.
This was the map in 2018 before we mushroomed. I don't know if I can share my screen because I did do it like even drills this down even further.
Yeah, I think so. Let me stop sharing here.
And let me see, share. So I'm hoping you can see my map. Let me
Yep.
make that.
Yeah, we can see it.
So like I can drill down and go, okay, how many people did I get in that conversation with going into Orlando? So there's 88 right there just at that local where I was at. And then it came from Tampa and Jacksonville and Miami. This was just me going in there. We've got, all these members from the East Coast. That was from a vacation draw we got in. Uh, Tennessee, Alabama, we got in some vacation draw. Again, it was having a conversation with them. I stopped in Tennessee when I was in Nashville for a family event, and I thought, okay, let me just pop in there. So, it just takes us as credit union people just getting out in our community and letting them know, hey, we're here. Um, our fastest growing area is actually LA, San Francisco, um, Las Vegas, Phoenix. I know Ray's over there in Phoenix, or in Arizona, excuse me, not Phoenix, but I do have a lot of members that are building infrastructures in Phoenix now that have left here and gone down there, and then talked to other ironworkers about the credit union. So I know we're kind of hitting those areas, and you can see just drilling it down how impactful we've been just having them members all over in the red here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know you've also had a lot of success in Boston too.
Yep.
And so the next question for you is what's next, right? Uh,
Ooh.
and maybe the other thing that I wanted to ask you before we switch gears here to Scott is, so yes, you have all this opportunity for new members, right? There are 90,000 iron workers across the country, and now your credit union can add them all as members, right? But how do you convert them from just membership to being an engaged member, using the credit union as their primary financial institution, using loans? Like, what's the secret sauce for converting them into being really engaged with Iron Workers USA?
Well, we answer the phone. I don't have an automated system. So we pick up first thing, which is essential for our membership, maybe not for everybody else's, but it is for ours. And having those conversations with members about um, what's going on in their life. We just, as we're, maybe pulling up co-op or our debit card processor, we'll ask, how's the weather in Phoenix? Um, are you staying cool? Did you get a new car? I think just answering the phone and having conversations instead of pushing members electronically has worked for us. I get it. It's a huge expense for credit unions, but because we are smaller, we've made a huge investment in being there and available for our members when they need us. So we have the electronic tools if they want to use that, but really, there's some days I'll send out the e-blast, and I want to throw the phone out the window. And because there's so many calls coming in, and I know anybody else would be like, what is going on? I had a credit union one day call me and she said, I haven't had anybody call me in 4 hours. We thought our phones were broke. And so we tried to call our phones ourselves. So I know that, it, a lot of people would kill to have that happen, but there's some days I want to throw the phone out the window because it's out of control. But again, what this tells me is, yeah, I went into Alabama and there's a credit union in Alabama already that could help these members, but they weren't. My members don't even know what a credit union is that are joining this credit union in Nashville. Yes, there's Nashville credit unions, but they're not reaching my members. And so I don't want anyone to ever think I'm coming in and taking their members. I don't want your members. I want my members that understand our work, that we're here to help them, that I do go above and beyond. I'm not saying that they don't, but I never look at it as I'm taking other credit union members. I'm taking people that weren't helped by other credit unions. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think, just knowing your story so well, Terry, that's the other thing that really allows you to differentiate yourself as a financial institution. I mean, yes, you serve this unique population in ironworkers, but even more specifically than that, you serve folks that really don't understand personal finances, that don't understand banking or have been shut out of banking. And I think that kind of speaks to part of the growth is that you're serving people that don't have options in other places, and that also sort of leads to the CDFI work that has been a big part of the success for the credit union, getting CDFI grants and growing because you have that resource as well. And so it's not just the expansion. Certainly, it's not just the specific focus on ironworkers, but it's also making an impact on the people who need the most help, right? And all of that sort of working together, I think, is what's really led to your success at Ironworkers USA.
yeah.
So, any last comments? Any last thoughts about field of membership, or what that has meant for your credit union as we transition to Scott sharing a little bit about some options that credit unions have?
Yeah, I just, again, I said it in the beginning, I just think we're needed now more as ever as credit unions. And I know that everybody on this call, is hoping to gain some information. And I hope just even a little piece of nugget, just even that there's hope out there, could be something that comes from this webinar today. Or what is your box? What is your box? It may not, it doesn't have to look like this. It doesn't have to feel like this. You could do a bag, you could do anything, a coffee mug, just something to let your members know you care, that you enjoy that they share their experiences with the credit union. You could go out to our website and listen to all the testimonials out there. We just grab them and ask them a few questions and slap it on our website, and it works so well because it's them telling their story. It's better than me out there telling what you can and can't do, or having some actors, but it's our members that are actually telling about their experiences here at the credit union that resonates and has built our growth. So I hope that others can find that in their existing members, because they're out there. You just got to ask them. Sit in your lobby as a CEO or as a marketing person. Go sit out in the lobby and listen to your members, what they're saying that they need from you, and you might pivot.
Yes, absolutely. Well, great guidance and great words of wisdom and great advice as always, Terry. Stay on the line for the next 15 minutes or so because there are probably questions for you. And while folks are thinking about questions, we're going to switch it over to Scott here, who's going to share a couple of pieces of information about what you should be considering as you think about your expansion strategy. And so I'll drive the slides and Scott can kind
Thank
of
you.
talk further.
Really, just the big challenge is I believe membership growth, organic membership growth, is the biggest challenge facing credit unions today. It's in my mind, it's not compliance, although compliance is a pain in the butt. The reality is when you look at the median in Q3 2025, credit union membership declined 0.5%. You have to get into the bigger credit unions over 500 million before you start seeing that regular growth. And we all know a good portion of that is indirect, which I don't count. Obviously, it's is organic growth. So credit unions need to grow. We need to grow members, and we can figure out the secret sauce of how do we track those members. We're going to grow, and we need to find a group of people that still need a credit union. Teri's members need her. So when you're looking at field of membership, we're looking at groups. I mean, it could be a neighborhood, it could be a new county, it could be a state. We've got to find a group, or it could be some segs. We've got to find groups of people that still need a credit union, and then define what that need is. Go ahead, Tom. So I mentioned earlier, we really focus on underserved areas and rural districts. Underserved area is a geographic area, contiguous area that has, we can identify economic stress indicators, a lack of access to financial services, and higher concentrations of low-income households. And when you put that plan together, it requires a strong narrative. We really need to dive into what are those economic distress indicators. It's easy to use data to find low-income census tracts, super easy. But when you're making your argument, your narrative, you need to break it down and say, why does this credit union need us? In Teri's case, we've got a group of people that don't understand credit and money management. And one of the things we excel here is the ability to teach people and give them access, and we give second chances. So that was perfectly aligned with what the need of that group was. So the narrative, again, you're making a sell of probably every one of those dots on Teri's heat map are overbanked communities. So she mentioned there currently could be served by other credit unions and banks in there. So how is she attracting them? Well, she knows what they need and she knows how to get to them. So that's the underserved area. I'll show you what a map looks like in a minute. And then the rural district. These are rural areas, lower population densities, small towns, remote communities. Um, and we talk about them sometimes as banking deserts. These are areas where we've got clients and friends that banks are moving out of an area in rural areas, and the credit unions intentionally moving into that rural area. And the thing about this is we've got to be able to establish in the narrative some clear boundaries and what the community profile is. Again, why does that credit union need your community? Next slide. Two examples of maps here. Underserved, you can see if you see the highlighted there, those are census tracts, low income census tracts. Low income is defined as less than 80% of the median area of the micro or the metro statistical area. And so in this case, looking at, the credit union was able to cover the area of Lewiston. And so from a marketing perspective, we're able to identify we're going to serve the people living in and around Lewiston, Idaho. And then, of course, when a member applied, they would be able to look up that census tract, the address, and find the census tract um, to to approve it. On the right is an example of a rural area where we can show that the percent of the population that is considered underbanked and lower income based on the rural population size. And these are great field of memberships, so easier to define. And we find that rural credit unions can still, in fact, among our most successful clients, serve rural communities because the need is there.
Mm.
Next slide. So what does a strong package include? You heard a whole bunch of it from Teri. We got to have a good definition. I have some map clarity of we have to show we understand the demographic and the economic story of the people living there. What are there gaps? Can we identify some gaps that are not financial gaps that are currently not offered. And then in the plan, we need to say, okay, here's what our products and services will be to meet those specific gaps that are there. And then, marketing, Tom mentioned a marketing engagement plan. You got to show this is how we're going to go reach them. This is how we're going to serve them. And you have to have come in with more than we've got great friendly service and really good rates and low cost fees, because that isn't going to cut it with the NCUA. Some red flags NCUA is going to be looking at, some vague, overly broad boundaries. If you can only serve one county, well, I wouldn't ask for 7 or 8 counties. You'll be able to show, I mean, if you do that one county well, go back and ask for more. Teri was able to ask for the US because she's already served people regionally, even before some of the other US areas. You got to have, they don't like weak narratives because in their mind, it's like you haven't really thought this out and you know what you're not. You got to build confidence in NCUA that you're going to be able to go in and serve that area. No clear delivery plan. We're just going to do marketing. I working with Denise right now with a credit union that we need a 2-year marketing plan to show what we will spend and how specifically we'll market in the area for them to believe and believe the plan has some credibility. The growth assumptions. Now, I will say, Teri, that we actually had to water down her growth projections for the first 2 years because we were afraid the NCUA would have a coronary. So I actually had to water those down. But they've got to be realistic. We got to make them realistic that we can go in there. I wouldn't say, well, we're going to go into that county and we're going to grow membership 10% next year. Well, you've been negative membership growth for the last 5 years. How are you going to go in and get 10% in the community? It might be the first year as you break even with membership. They got to be realistic, and you got to show that you've got operational readiness to go. That's the NCUA red flags.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to build on that, as we go into launching a poll and doing the Q&A here, the NCUA, to their credit, they are very transparent and they are willing to work with you on the front end to make sure that you are applying for the right thing. So whether you're considering an underserved area in expansion or a rural area or a general community, which we certainly help with, or multiple common bond or what have you, that the NCUA is more than willing to work with you in identifying what the right path is, and that's a big part of our process that I've really come to appreciate and love. Is that we spend a lot of time on the front end making sure that you're applying for the right thing in the right way, so that you have a lot of confidence in the application process. Because as you might expect, or as you might have heard, these things tend to draw out, right? So you might put the application together in a couple of months. But then it takes the NCUA a great deal of time to go through it, to review it, and to approve it. And more often than not, and almost 100% of the time in our experience, they do come back with corrections or things that they want more clarification on. And then you have to provide updates to the application, which then go back into that review period. So it does take a long time. And so we feel like the more time we invest on the front end, making sure that we are applying for the right thing, and doing it with the right information that the NCUA wants to hear based on the feedback that they give us on the front end, we set you up for success in that application process. So thank you very much, Scott. That was really great. And so in our last couple of minutes here, we do have some poll questions that we thought we'd have everybody take. And then as you're filling, so Allison, feel free to launch those. And then as you're filling these out, also think about some questions. I think we've had some questions roll in. So I don't know. I haven't been looking at the chat, but maybe if we have some questions to start with, we can start working through those.
Mostly just comments for now, but no questions as of yet.
Okay, start thinking of questions if you have them, and we'll see what the results of the poll looks like as well. And then Allison, you should be able to, once you see that everyone's filled it out, or most people have filled it out, you should be able to publish the results so that I think everyone can see them.
I'm not seeing that. It says end poll. We'll see what happens when I do that.
Well, as you're working through that, just wanted to sort of reiterate kind of what I just talked about, which was sort of like the typical timeline that you'll see. So for us, we break up this process into two parts. We do sort of a feasibility project, which is a very small in scope first phase, where we do that due diligence with the NCUA. We work with the leadership team and the board to understand what the goals are and what you're trying to accomplish from an expansion standpoint. And then we put together a little bit of market analysis on what that opportunity would look like if you go in that direction. And then the big part is working with the NCUA, and really getting a sense from them on what they will approve or what they'd be willing to approve. And then we go forward with that piece and make that recommendation to you. And then if you're confident and comfortable moving forward with the full expansion application, then we work with you on that process. And, this is kind of our best estimate based on our recent experience with credit unions on how long the process takes, but feasibility 2 to 3 months. With CDFI grant season coming, that could change certainly because that's a big priority for us as a team, but still confident in that 2 to 3 month timeline for the first phase of the feasibility work. And then as for a full application, typically around 3 to 6 months. And so, and I should say that's 3 to 6 months after the first engagement. So feasibility the first 3 months, and then the full application the next 3 months. And then as far as approval from the NCUA, could be another six months or 6 to 12 months, I guess I would say. And so it, could be from the first engagement, first phone call that we have with you, could be 12 to 18 months for approval, just to set expectations and what's realistic as far as getting these expansions approved. Could be earlier than that, could be sooner than that, but we like to be as transparent and realistic as possible.
We do have a couple questions from Jody. Are there any camel rating restrictions to be aware of when pursuing a field of membership expansion?
The NCUA absolutely, I don't know if Scott, you want to chime in, but the NCUA does look absolutely at, your full, financials and, your full credit union's, exam history, right? Like you're typically working with an examiner. And so they have a full understanding of where you are as a credit union from a risk standpoint. So yes, absolutely. If they're concerned about your sustainability as a financial institution, that will absolutely impact the chances of success. Scott, any other?
All I would add is, if you got a Camel 3 or worse, I wouldn't pursue this. Also, if you've got, DORs or things that are in process, um, I what I would recommend if you've got something like that, but you've been working with your examiner, is I would talk to them and say, what's your feeling? In fact, a lot of times we'll tell a client, call your examiner, ask them, let's test the waters. Where are they at? And if they give you a hell no, then you don't want to spend money to anybody pursuing field of membership until you get that worked out, right? But yeah, you want to come from a position of strength. Now, if you haven't been growing membership, I that's why we're doing this. So I wouldn't worry about that. But geez, we haven't really been growing loans, or we really haven't been growing members. But you're well capitalized, you're profitable, you're sustainable. That's not going to limit you.
And then the other part of that question was whether YCUP provides support for state charter field of membership expansions as opposed to federal.
Yep, we do.
The one
We
thing
may
I'll
not
mention,
know that the state's DFI, but what we find is the parity with the NCUA. It really isn't. We haven't had any problems with states because we approach this from the NCOA requirements.
Mhm. Yeah, just to point of order, we are 3 minutes over the hour. And so we're happy to hang on and answer questions, but also want to be respectful of folks' time since the webinar was called for an hour. This whole conversation I know has been recorded for everyone, and so we'll send out the recording afterwards for anything that you might have missed. But if you need to jump off, absolutely feel free to do so. And any other questions, Allison?
Nothing in the chat, but I was able to push out the poll questions if you wanted to lead in with any comments on that.
Yeah, so it looks like the first one, how interested is your credit union in doing an expansion? We're pretty even across the board, across those options. I added the not sure. I don't know if you saw that, Allison, but I added the not sure. I thought that would be a good one, which I think is a very valid response, right? And hopefully, this webinar has helped in getting you, more towards the sure about a timeline. But absolutely valid. These are big projects, and you want to make sure that you have alignment at the board level, at the leadership team level, that you're ready to do this as an organization. So that's great. Number two, if you were going to expand your field of membership, what type of expansion would you be looking at? So adding underserved areas, that's and Scott can speak to this as he's done many of these. That's maybe the most straightforward expansion. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that piece, Scott.
Yeah, just this, that again, that ties into we got to make a strong argument that the folks, there's an unmet need in the area. And so it's easier, in my opinion, when you're looking at underserved market because they have income challenges, they have housing challenges, they have credit challenges. They need financial education, they need credit building, they need second chances, they need access to affordable car loans. So the alignment there in underserved is it's a better alignment, and I think it supports growth. It can support growth.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and then the other thing to note is that even if you're applying for a community or adding to a multiple common bond by adding a new organization to your seg, the NCOA now, as standard practice, is asking you what your plan is for serving underserved folks in that new field of membership. So even if you're not just focused on an underserved expansion, the NCUA still wants to know what your plan is for serving those types of members and those communities. So one way or the other, you do need to have a strategy and a plan in place for how you're going to serve those who have been left out of the traditional financial services industry, right? So it's something that you do have to put together regardless. All right. The next question was, what is the biggest reason you're considering a field of membership expansion? Love to see this one. Underserved areas near our credit union need our support. In our opinion, one of the greatest reasons why you can expand your field of membership, and it goes back to exactly what Teri was talking about. There are folks in her field of membership or outside of her field of membership that need access and need support and need service. And so by expanding your field of membership, you're then giving them that access. So that's a absolutely fantastic reason. And as Scott can enumerate for you, and as Teri already has, it can also be this fantastic opportunity for growth for the credit union as well. And then last but not least, what gives you the greatest amount of pause to pursuing an expansion? The number one was resource requirements to apply, followed by risk of overextending the credit union's capacity. Yeah, very, very valid. I don't know, Scott, if you have any initial feedback to that, or Allison.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to it. There's no question when you've heard about Teri's journey, and not only writing the plan and all that, there's a lot of work. This is not an easy path, but we don't have an easy path to sell you. I don't know of an easy path to growth and relevance. It's going to be hard. And so the question is, um, all of us need to have a path to growth and sustainability, every one of us. And so if we don't, and you don't have one that's working, yeah, this is going to be a lot of work. there's going to be resources. I think that's a valid concern. And so you may put you in a position where you have to prioritize, is this the best path forward for growth and relevance? If it's not, pursue the one that is, right? At the bottom line, that's what you need to do. But yeah, and I totally get it. This is a lot of work. This isn't easy. We're going to run some data for you and we're going to tell you what your percent is and get you approved and now go. Well, no, you got to have a business plan. You got to go do something with it.
I think one thing too, I wasn't clear on was when we did apply, working with the NCUA, they came back and had some more questions for me and changed it from a tip charter, which is this trade industry profession, to an associational common bond, which was different than what I originally went in for. So there was communication back and forth, what works, what would work for what we're trying to do. And that was a suggestion by the NCUA to move for that associational common bond. So by my members all belonging to the international charter of the ironworkers and paying dues to that association, that's what makes them eligible to join nationwide. So that is a little bit different than some credit unions, but I did want to clarify that because I didn't in the beginning. So
Yeah, I appreciate that, Terry, and I think that sort of speaks to why I really like our approach of breaking this process up into the two pieces, the initial feasibility work and then the full application, because we learn what the right charter type is at the outset, so that we're starting from a place of confidence, and what hopefully that means is that the process goes faster as well. Because you probably did the initial application and then got the feedback from the NCUA, and that just delayed approval a little bit. But if we start early with the right direction from the NCUA, that gets us to approval faster. So that's fantastic too. Thanks for sharing that. And then the other thing is, the commentary on, the resources needed or the capacity after the approval. One thing that you just do inherently as part of this process is you put together a plan for that. So the NCUA isn't going to say, well, this sounds like a good idea. Good luck. We hope it works out. Like, they want to see that you have a concrete plan for how you will scale your business, how you will staff up, how you will make the investments in the technology to improve efficiency so that you do have the capacity to serve an increased field of membership. And so that's kind of one of the benefits of going through this process is it forces you to think through what that plan is. And it gives you sort of this roadmap for how you do scale up the operation once you do get the expansion. So they're not going to just let you, go and, just, I don't know. So hope that it works. They want to see the plan, and going through the expansion application process allows you to put that plan together. So that should give you.
One thing I just want to throw in that too. The other thing is that's one area we help is Tom, Allison, and we get to work with some really smart credit union leaders that are innovative, that are trying new stuff, that are successful. And so as we're helping the credit union build their plan, we're sharing best practices. We're sharing, hey, this is what we've seen work. Have you considered doing this and that? So I frequently we're able to provide some ideas for the credit union going through the field of membership that are directly related and sometimes indirectly related that can help them become more successful. We also like the folks that we work with will tell you we like to connect our network together. And so that you're not going, we don't want you going out there alone on this. We want you to have all the best practices that we know of and also connect you with the best and brightest. This is one of our paydays is when we can have friends like Teri or other amazing leaders out there go out and hit home runs consistently. That for us is the biggest payday we get. So when we come in, we bring everything we've got to help you create a successful plan. Even if you don't have all the elements in place, we can help recommend ideas to get you started.
Yeah, very well said. All right. Anything else? Any other questions in the chat, Allison?
No other questions.
Okay. Any last comments from Scott or from Allison or from Teri before we wrap up?
I'll just say thank you everyone for joining us and your patience as we work through rescheduling. I've posted a few comments in the chat, but just to reiterate that we will be sending the recording and a copy of the slides out. Give us about a week to get everything compiled and look for that email to come from me. And of course, if you have any questions, you have Tom's information on the screen, as well as my email after today's session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Teri, for your participation and your
Thanks, Teri.
information.
You bet. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And if you're going to be at GAC, come to the joint reception that we're hosting with your marketing company and CULA, because we will be there and we'll be ready to celebrate. So love to see you at GAC in a couple of weeks here.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.